Hamjambo, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the only show where politics is treated the way it behaves, like a badly supervised family reunion, where everybody is shouting and nobody is accountable. Ute, Papa Ute! Papa Ute! Ute, Papa Ute! I had to put that in there, and somehow the bill still comes to you. My name is Willis Raburu, and this is Hold My Mic. Drop the beat!
Hold my mic, hold my mic, hold my mic, yeah, yo, hold my mic, hey, hold my mic, hold my mic, hey, hold my mic, hold my mic.
Now, I want to begin this story with a very polite question. Who exactly is running the Orange Democratic Movement Party? Now, before you start throwing stones, just listen to me for a minute. So, President William Ruto was in Kisumu this past Monday, and ODM party leader Dr. Oburu Odinga stepped up to address the gathering. Oburu used the moment to throw down some clarifications, or what sounds like clarifications if you enjoy political riddles. Oburu insisted that ODM is not gunning for Deputy President Kithure Kindiki's job in the ongoing talks with UDA. Not gunning.
We are not going to look for less. Lakini Deputy President, usifikiria ya kwamba tunataka kiti yako, tunataka kukufukuza. Please, you are our friend, but as we negotiate, we are going to negotiate what our people deserve.
Now, that statement immediately raises a few questions. If ODM isn't eyeing the deputy president's seat in 2027 and it isn't planning to field its own presidential contender, then what exactly is Oburu bargaining for in those talks with William Ruto? Some ceremonial appointment with no real influence, or just free tea? Because right now, it doesn't even look like there are any talks going on between ODM and UDA. It's starting to look more and more like this is all Oburu and Ruto do behind closed doors. This is all they do.
Asante.
And here is where it gets even juicier. A day after Oburu danced with Ruto on stage and gave Kindiki a pep talk, ODM's own Secretary General Edwin Sifuna Atawatafuna went on live TV and dropped a bombshell. Now, according to Sifuna, the money we see being spent in ODM rallies is not actually coming from ODM. Sifuna explained that the last official party spending he signed off on was for ODM's 20th anniversary celebrations in Mombasa 3 months ago.
I can state authoritatively here that the money and the resources you see being spent in those ODM rallies, the so-called underground, those monies are not coming from ODM headquarters.
Where are they coming from?
You will ask them. Because for me, this is what I'm telling you. This is what I'm telling you. I can only account for monies that, because I'm a signatory to the bank accounts, forget this rubbish you hear people saying here. Timothy Bosire, the treasurer, is a signatory to the bank accounts. The last money we expended as ODM, officially, was for the celebrations in Mombasa. And it was a fraction of what we saw there. So I am telling you, I know for a fact, there is parallel funding for activities clothed in ODM colors. And they go around running around saying they are ODM delegates.
Now that means every big rally in Nairobi, Kisumu, Kakamega, Busia and Kisii, those giant tents, those loudspeakers, branded caps and Linda Ground t-shirts, they didn't come from ODM headquarters, which makes one wonder. If a senior signatory to the party's bank accounts, such as a secretary general, doesn't know where the cash is coming from, then ODM might be living for free in a house where they don't even know who's paying the water bill. And just to add another layer to this very beautiful chaos, enter Kisumu Women Representative Ruth Odinga. Yes, Oburu's own sister and a senior member of the Odinga clan. Ruth came out swinging in Sifuna's defense. She reminded everyone that Sifuna wasn't rebelling, that he was doing what any sensible leader should do, ask basic accounting questions like who's paying for the choppers. Ruth didn't mince her words. She asked outright, So, are governors funding these rallies? Are members of parliament digging into CDF? Or did the party suddenly get a philanthropist who nobody at the party headquarters knows about? Philanthropist. He who pays the piper. Ruth also asked a question about the talks between Oburu and Ruto that may have left many political operatives shaking in their boots. That if the original 10-point Memorandum of Understanding or MOU between ODM and UDA was not honored, then why should anyone trust a new pre-election pact? Basically, in corporate speak, she was saying, if you can't pay me for the job we already agreed on, why should I sign up for phase 2? Ruth went ahead to remind people that raising these kinds of concerns has always been part of ODM's heritage. That even when Raila Odinga himself was in government, he wasn't afraid to ask inconvenient questions. So rather than criticizing Sifuna, Ruth argued that the party should be thanking him for speaking truth to confusion. Because in a party that suddenly looks like a dinner where half the guests are invited and the other half paid for their own meal, being the one who asks who's footing the bill is a powerful place to stand. But here's a burning question for everyone watching. Is Dr. Oburu Odinga really calling the shots inside ODM? Or is someone else on the outside remotely controlling the steering wheel and the GPS? I don't know. I'm asking you. All right, now let's take a diplomatic detour to Uganda, where political drama isn't just happening on the streets, it's playing out on X, and now even has American senators worried. Now here is the lowdown. Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces General Muhoozi, who is also the son of President Yoweri Museveni, he lit up social media with a series of incendiary posts about the United States and its involvement in Ugandan politics. Muhoozi's tweets accused officials at the US Embassy in Kampala of helping opposition leader Bobi Wine escape after his home was raided in this tense aftermath of Uganda's disputed elections early this year. He even declared an end to military cooperation with the US. Yes, finished, over. Going as far as to say joint operations with Washington would cease. Then things got interesting because
12 seconds later,
Muhoozi seemed to realize that, you know what, this might have been just a bit dramatic. He deleted the post and issued an apology claiming he had been fed wrong information and that everything was fine with the United States after all. Military cooperation as usual. And so it was back to business, or so he thought, until came Jim Risch, the chairman of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who looked at Muhoozi's deletion and apology and said, no, this one is not over. Now, Risch said bluntly that Muhoozi had crossed a red line with those reckless tweets, calling the apology insufficient and hollow. He warned that Washington might have to reevaluate its security partnership with Uganda, including sanctions and military cooperation. Yes, a U.S. senator was publicly threatening to reassess two countries' defense relationship because of tweets. And that's when Muhoozi decided to double down instead of dial down. In a fiery social media reply, Muhoozi, clearly not impressed by being told he crossed a red line, threw back some very diplomatic language of his own. Now, he dared the US to do whatever it wanted with the partnership, but insisted that Uganda would never be demeaned or degraded and would never be anyone's slave. That's a fight with adjectives, folks. An international spat over tweets that in the end could affect real defense cooperation between nations. Now, this isn't just political chatter. This is diplomacy mixed with bravado delivered on a social network. And it's a reminder that in the post-tweet world, foreign policy is sometimes dictated not from embassies, but from the tips of someone's thumb. Because when a general starts battle with senators on social media, it is less international relations and more international group chat drama. Now, welcome back to Kenya, where the government has started whispering sweet fiscal nothings into the ears of voters, and the voters are pretending to understand the economics. Yes, this week, President William Ruto made a very specific and very politically convenient tax proposal. His government says it wants to exempt over 1.5 million employed Kenyans earning below 30,000 Kenyan shillings from paying pay-as-you-earn, or payee, altogether.
Any Kenyan who earns less than 30,000 shillings will not pay any taxes. That is how progressively we are going to make sure that we manage the cost of living.
Now, at face value, and let's be honest here, that actually does sound fantastic. Who wouldn't want more money in their pocket each month? But as every Kenyan knows, if it sounds too good to be true, it might come with a political season attached. Here's a fact first. PAYE is one of the largest sources of revenue for the government. It funds everything from police salaries to road tarmacking. Now, imagine removing almost 1.5 million payees from that tax net. That's not just a tax break, that's a big gaping hole in the revenue ledger. Where does the money come from instead? More borrowing, higher VAT, selling coffee? And look at the timing of this announcement. Now, here's where it gets juicy. 1 year to the election. Exactly when voters are listening for hope, for relief, and for anything that sounds like disposable income for the next shere. Do Kenyans remember 3 years back when a man named Kiprono tweeted this? Perhaps we didn't realize it then that it was a prophecy and not just satire. But here we are. Over the last 2 weeks alone, we've heard so many election-friendly promises and policies that the 9 p.m. news now feels like a campaign playlist. This PAYE exemption promise is what political scientists call populist policy, something that feels good at rallies, debates, and WhatsApp groups, but might cause actual economists to twitch with existential dread. It is the politics of vote for me, I have a plan. I have a plan. Niko na mpango, followed by crickets, because the Treasury has not published a credible cost estimate or a financing plan that says we can do this without shortchanging services. They haven't done that at all. Promises without credible implementation plans are like sugar in tea, sweet in theory, but meaningless without substance. Is this a good idea? Perhaps, but is it well thought out, funded, and sustainable? Now that is the right and real question. Right now, the proposals coming out of State House feel like pre-election creative writing, not fiscally vetted policy. And for a country that's struggling with stagnant development spending, housing loan mismanagement, and health funds that look more like potholes than policy, iko mambo mingi sana. This sudden bloom of election season generosity should be taken with a grain of salt and maybe a full spoon of skepticism, because here's the real punchline. Like I said, promises are like sugar, sweet for a moment and gone in the next cup. But taxes are like your in-laws at the wedding, unavoidable, lasting, and they decide where the food goes. So before we start celebrating tax exemptions and budget fairy tales, let's ask an uncomfortable but important question. Is this smart economics or just smart marketing?
I am not a madman. Am I a madman? I'm not a madman.
Mimi si wazimu.
Na mimi si wazimu. I am not a madman.
Now, let's leave that and circle into the government summit where journalist Tucker Carlson kicked off the series of "Are you kidding me right now?" with this question.
President Mnangagwa, I wonder what lessons you've been in the government of Zimbabwe for decades in various roles, including through a very turbulent period where your predecessor famously kicked out the whites and then the economy tanked and now it's rising again. I wonder if you would summarize the lessons that your country has learned from that experience.
So, they kicked out the whites and the economy tanked. Now, that sentence alone has traveled far. It's been on podcasts, it's been on WhatsApp groups, it's been on all the social media, really. It's basically the free Wi-Fi password of lazy geopolitics. And it's the quiet, unspoken headline hovering over Tucker Carlson's interview with President Emmerson. Because Tucker doesn't say it outright. Oh no, he does the thing where the question is wearing a trench coat, sunglasses, and a fake mustache, pretending to be neutral while clearly smuggling in its own verdict. He leans forward like a man who's watched exactly one documentary about Zimbabwe and feels ready. And then President Emmerson responds with a line so deceptively calm it should be studied in diplomacy school.
I'm not so sure what you have in mind.
Sir, neither do we, but give the man the shovel and let him continue to dig his grave, because let's unpack what they kicked out the whites is actually doing here. It quietly skips over the colonization part, the land seizures part, the laws written specifically to make black people tenants on their own soil, the fact that a tiny minority owned the vast majority of fertile land for decades. But Tucker was not done. He wanted to make sure that after the digging of the grave, after he was buried, he was ready with his own epitaph.
Well, some of the land was seized from people who were born there. So I wonder if there's a lesson about targeting people on the basis of their skin color. Do you think?
Can I hear you?
Well, people had their land seized in Zimbabwe who were born in Zimbabwe, and they were targeted on the basis of their race. And I wonder if you think that's good or bad.
So Tucker keeps nudging, trying to corner him into admitting that taking land was reckless, irrational, and some kind of spontaneous African impulse that ruined a perfectly good economy. But here's a problem with that sort of framing. Now, you can criticize how land reform was done. That's okay, and that's probably fair. You can debate what should have happened differently because there are always options. You can even argue about outcomes. But what you cannot do, at least not with a straight face, is discuss land ownership without explaining how that ownership was established in the first place. Because land reform isn't just a magic trick where land appears out of nowhere, but then let the president explain to Tucker in his own words.
Land did not belong to a race. It
Right,
belonged to
that's right.
Zimbabweans. So when the colonialists took land from us, time came when we asserted ourselves, take back our land. And those who wanted to have land at the same basis as the African people of Zimbabwe remained. But those who felt they were superior left.
Okay.
The lesson, folks, if your argument only works by skipping the beginning of the story, it's not an argument, it's editing. Viva Africa. Now, still in international news, this week at the 68th Grammy Awards, host Trevor Noah cracked jokes about everything from music winners to global heads of state, and almost on cue, one of those heads of state wasn't amused. Trevor was presenting the coveted Song of the Year award to Billie Eilish when he dropped a zinger that had the audience giggling and one elder statesman very triggered.
That is a Grammy that every artist wants, almost as much as Trump wants Greenland, which makes sense. I mean, because Epstein's island is gone, he needs a new one to hang out with Bill Clinton. So, oh, I told you it's my last year.
Now, that joke hits two American passions in one line: geography and intrigue around the late Jeffrey Epstein, and who is a convicted sex offender whose offshore island has become a shorthand for the scandal in elite circles. Now, it wasn't long before US President Donald Trump responded the only way he knows how, by threatening to sue Trevor Noah. Yes, he did. Yes, the president of the world's leading superpower is going to sue a comedian not for talking about his tax or immigration policy, but for making a joke about islands. On his social media platform, that is Truth Social, Trump blasted Trevor Noah's joke as incorrect and false and defamatory, insisting he's never been to Epstein Island nor anywhere close, and claiming that the comedian must get his facts straight. In a separate interview, Trump called Trevor Noah a lightweight and a terrible, terrible host.
He said that I spent time on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't. I mean, he's a lightweight, this guy. He's a terrible, I think he's terrible. I thought he did a terrible job at the Grammys. I thought the whole Grammys was terrible. I watched part of it. It's not watchable. But he was a lousy host. I'd say not as bad as Jimmy Kimmel, but pretty close. And no, he made a statement about me and Jeffrey Epstein's. I have nothing to do with that.
Meanwhile, online, the reactions have been colorful, to say the least. Some commentators on social forums suggested a Trump lawsuit over a Grammy joke might face a tough time in court because, you know, comedy and satire and freedom of speech, those very important things. Now, there's no lawsuit yet. There's no court summons, no judge warming up the gavel. Trevor Noah hasn't been served with anything more official than a social media tantrum that was posted at 2 a.m. And remember, they said at 2 a.m. is when he eats McDonald's. And this isn't some retired politician yelling at a TV in Florida. This is the sitting president of the United States, the most powerful man on earth, beefing with a stand-up comedian over a Grammy joke. Not inflation, not foreign policy, not war, a punchline. That's where we are as a civilization, ladies and gentlemen. It feels like watching season 7 of a show that should have been cancelled after season 2. All right, that's enough chaos for one sitting. Now, if you feel confused, don't you worry. That means you are paying attention. Take care of yourselves, drink some water, But remember, question everything. And we'll meet here next week, same time, to make sense of the nonsense. This has been Hold My Mic. My name is Willis Raburu, signing out.
Hao watu wawachane na sisi. Tutawaibisha. Wewe nani wewe? Wewe nani? Wewe.
Hold my mic.